Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mission 300 podcast. Here's what we're going to get after today. How do we build resilience for our journey to where we can leave the maternal security that we were nurtured with? And some people will call that your comfort zone. And for one, how do we even identify that maternal security and recognize it as being somewhat unhealthy as a grown man? And then we're going to get into some action steps that kind of slap ourselves in the face a bit to wake up. And we might talk a bit about this idea of you need a community and how that's been twisted to actually not really be what you need to discover who you are. So let's get into it.
You guys remember we've used that poem If by Rudyard Kipling. Well, he also wrote a book. It was called Captains Courageous. In this story, so this story was written in 1897. So think about any book, whether it was like Where the Red Fern Grows, like the Civil War-ish era. It was always like if you read Where the Red Fern Grows, it's kind of like the saddest book at the end. For those who haven't read it, I'm going to be a little bit of a spoiler. The two dogs die. I mean, that's the story. And it's like the kid grows up and is going through this rite of passage. So there was this journey, whether it was from the early Daniel Boone stories, this rite of passage in that early era of going from boyhood to manhood. And one of the books by Rudyard Kipling was Captains Courageous. And it's a story of this boy. He comes from a wealthy family. His dad's this train tycoon and a lot of money. And they're on a ship liner traveling across the ocean. And the boy falls overboard. And he's a spoiled brat little boy. All the comforts of life, all the motherings, all the trappings of it. He's spoiled because you're trying to be a man, but you don't want to actually have it cost you anything. So now he's struggling in the ocean. This fishing boat picks him up with his Portuguese fisherman. But the man's going to finish his fishing trip. Like he's got to finish this catch because he has responsibilities to care for these people. So he's not going to just turn. So he has the boy work on the boat until they get back. And it's just the story how the boy goes from being a spoiled brat to a young man, responsible, and wants to stay with the captain when it's all over. He was actually more drawn to that life than the other. And you could even see this too, like even in the President Theodore Roosevelt, when he came from a very wealthy family, very taken care of, but he did have a dad that pushed him to deal with his physical body, to deal with his asthma, so he could move on in life. And from that, he became someone who would go out and live with the cowboys. He went and discovered how other people lived in the harshness of America. And it was another book, the same era, where it was almost like a young man went and found the rite of passage so they could be a man. And we have just so lost that. And different cultures do this. And so when we're talking about being mothered, it's not necessarily a female mothering you. It's that comfort mothering, like keep it safe, make it peaceful. Let's have our good environment. It's counter to how it's going to help you grow. It's a very interesting paradox. And we see this it's in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 14 through 16. It talks about the people of old, all the people of faith that are our heroes that stand in the gap. And they had this common characteristic, all of them. It says in 11, 14 through 16, for those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called to mind the country from which they came out, they would have had opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is a heavenly country. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, and he has prepared a city for them. So this idea that once you step forward into this manly pursuit, this pursuit outside, you don't look back to once you came from. You're not always in like, man, I wished I had it back there. You're moving forward. And the other final thought, which was really brought out, kind of really highlighted, John Eldridge highlighted this a lot in the Wild at Heart series, is, and the Bible brings it out, is woman was formed from man's rib in the garden, but man was formed in the wilderness, in the wild. He was formed from the dust of the ground in the wild. And so it's very interesting that even in the garden, God says that there's 3 rivers that flow from the garden. And at the end, there's gold. And he talks about what's at the end of each of these things. And they're good. So there was no point where their whole life was to remain in that garden, but to expand and to explore and to go out. And this is a common theme. And I just, this is Brianism a little bit. So, but I just always ponder God, when he created the earth, he created this infinite universe that really can't be measured and everything that's in there. I think he made it for us. Now, I don't know, obviously, now I don't think Musk is going to be able to get us to all the places before Jesus returns, but I think there's something deeply in that for our eternity of something much bigger that's exploratory with God as a father. And it's just different. So when we're talking about mothering, there's a nurturing point that you need, but at some point, you have to be able to step out so we can actually advance and grow into the things we're created to. And it's uncomfortable and it's hard and it's frustrating. We'll talk more a little bit about this, but it's necessary for us to become. We're designed that way. So even in the garden before sin, we were designed to grow and expand and to take care and to groom our life. So with that, maybe we could switch over and you guys can kind of start talking about what is the area of your life that you saw the most growth, not just that was hard, but you saw the most permanent growth in that was deeply beyond your comfort area.
I think for myself, it was um the period in time between high school and college of that stepping out from the comfort of home into the new thing and really exploring that, and that time in college of not becoming something new, but not carrying the weights of people you've been in relationship with since a young age. Like, our school was K through 12, and a lot of my friends K through 12, we met in kindergarten and we're friends all the way through, and they know everything. It's a small school. Everybody knows everybody, friends, family, the whole thing. But then leaving that comfort, I mean, because it is a comfort. It's really easy to just be like, oh, these are the people that get me, they understand me, is perfect. And yeah, that is great. Like, that is awesome if you have community like that. But then also stepping out into that and having a whole new community. I know a lot of people who didn't step out into that and still hang out with the same people. And I mean, this is probably the story of small towns too. Like, it's the ones who stay, right? And or go back or never leave the community, right? But to me, I think there was a ton of growth in making that jump, because I now couldn't just rely on, oh, these are my friends and they're going to bring me to the new friends. It's like, I didn't have anyone. I had to learn. I'd never done that. Like, I'd done it in smaller senses, but I'd never done it in a whole new realm of, like, I didn't need to. I could have just went to college and made no friends, no community, and just done the classes and moved on. But leaving the old community, high school, into the new community, like, that was such a growth and change. And honestly, I think a lot of that foundational stuff led to work, to now, to all those things. Like, it was almost like the high school, middle school experience was preparing me for all those things, but I needed to jump out away from that community, right? And grateful for it, yes. But if I would have just stayed in that, it would have almost been like a lid. And so there's this leaving of comfort into the discomfort. And then in a sense, that also, the next thing can also become the comfort again. And so it's kind of a process of continuing to push that line, that boundary of comfort. And so I think that period in my life, I would like to say I'm still pushing the bounds in comfort, but that was a bigger step, much bigger step.
Yeah, I would say mine is similar in the sense of maybe a few years after leaving home and everything. But I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast before, so I'll wear it out feed it like a dead horse. But the Appalachian Trail was a big one for me because it was really stepping into something I was uncomfortable in. Like, nobody in my family is very athletic in a way. Like, it's not like sports aren't a big deal, all that kind of stuff. So to go do something that's, like, to a lot of people considered like one of the, in a certain category of something like hiking, it's one of the more challenging things you could do. Like, 1 in 5 or whatever the statistic is, like 20% of, I can't even remember the statistic now. A lot of people who started don't finish. And I also learned that the hard way. And just pushing through something that takes a lot more endurance than even a week of backpacking or, even a month, like basically 6 months, and the end not being in sight for so long while also not believing you're really going to make it to the end anyways. So many things, even honestly, even more mental than physical by the time. It was all mental the second I was like 2 months into it, honestly. So that transition of doing something physically challenging that also, because of the physical aspect, became mentally challenging. I just hadn't done something like that in my life before. I'd done mentally challenging things, but nothing that started with being physically challenging at first. So that was a huge area of growth in my life, where it was like endurance and a lot of mental challenge, and also being on your own and really doing it on your own. Not like nobody else can hike it for you. Even trying to call my dad and being, telling him sometimes like borderline, hey, I'm not going to quit, but I'm just discussing this idea in my head of quitting this thing. Like, because, the rule in our family, maybe we're not sporty or whatever, is you never quit at anything. And I had done that before in really tough stuff, summer jobs, working in middle of nowhere, Alaska, but doing something for 6 months completely on my own and really having to face like real thoughts of disappointment and quitting and all these mental challenges. It grew me a lot. And there's some things where I'm like, man, I didn't learn my lesson still. Like, I still have to grow in these areas. It was just the initial springboard to get me moving. Like Tommy said, like after you grow really intensely in something on your own, you got to still keep on growing in that area, because then you realize, oh man, I'm just getting started in this thing, so there's still a long way to go. We were talking about it earlier, still gotta go one more, as a popular saying lately. So yeah, big area of
Caleb,
growth for me. Yeah.
I think it was a good answer, but I don't like it. I'm not satisfied with what you said, because I see you now in a different light too, of like, you're now in a new state by yourself, pursuing another thing. So like, how did you make that jump? Like, yes, you made the jump from like family being close to, or in school, to the Appalachian Trail. You did a really hard thing. And maybe that's like the Super Bowl for some people, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, you did it, you completed it, you're done. Like, celebrate, and now you're on to this next thing. Like, what was that transition like for you? Because like, I kind of see it in my story, but like, I feel like yours is very different, because now you're like, you were alone, isolated, and yeah, you had your phone and you talk to people, and we live in a 21st century. You have community wherever you go with a phone. But I've heard you talk about the struggle of physically living in a place where you are alone. You're far, far away from family. You're far, far away from any friends. Like, how did you make, like, I don't know. I see yourself, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I did the Appalachian Trail, time to go back to community and go live life. Right. And now you chose another thing, like another really hard thing, another lonely thing, and you're excelling at it. So like, just tell me more about that.
Well, I appreciate it. I would say, first of all, don't judge it too. I guess my metrics for success, which I think you guys would agree with, is different than just what it would even appear to you guys. Like, for people listening, Brian, Jason, Tommy know me very well, know lots of my thoughts on things more deeply than I would share here. So my metrics for success isn't even like, man, I made it out here, I'm doing the thing. Like, a lot of it is still, how am I responding to certain things? Like my heart, if we're to use like a spiritual term, my heart posture on stuff, like things that I'm like, sure, I did the Appalachian Trail, but it was like the initial growth pains, I think, of real life. Like, not even, you can look at it back and be a success. Like when I made it to the last mountain and got down off the mountain, there was no like huge dopamine rush of, this is it, we've made it. It was more like, oh man, this is life. This is like the summary of what I will be doing for the rest of my time here on Earth, was the realization, not I've done this thing and achieved something. So being in Oregon, like, I see it just as a continuation of the trail, in the way, being on my own, these different things. But I would say like the metric for success isn't even the doing the thing. Like, yes, it's an outside metric for success, but really it's like, how did I grow internally? Like, the Appalachian Trail grew me enough to where, okay, I could do this. I could do what I'm doing now.
Mm.
And so, and unfortunately, that's like with everything. I think there's a healthy part of it. Maybe there's a little bit unhealthy part because it's like, what's the next thing? But even for a practical example of like my job, you cannot go make a documentary that's great until you've gone and made a documentary that's not great. Or you can't, so you have to have these like processes of learning things. Like if I want to make more documentaries or films in the future, I have to go do the initial one that there are going to be aspects where I'm disappointed. I didn't get it perfectly. Okay, it taught me a lot. I learned a lot. Yes, are there some benefits from it? But I have to be that person going and doing the thing. Like the second you're on the trail, you are, a lot of people debate about when do you get to call yourself a through hiker, someone who's trying to do all 2,000 miles. And there's big debate like, oh, it's when you get to pass the halfway point. I think you're a through hiker the moment you're on the trail, the first 10 miles, all the way till you decide to quit or not finish. Like you are that when you're in the moment doing it. And you also have to believe that to keep moving through. So I don't know if that kind of answers your questions, but
No,
just from the
you
outside, I
answered
think
it.
it's,
You
growing
answered it.
internally is super important.
I think you said it right there. I mean, you said from the beginning, and I see it in yourself too, of like, you obviously went out on the trail the first time, you failed, but you were a through hiker in that moment. Your body just hadn't got to that metric yet, right? Like your mentality was there. Like you were a through hiker through and through, whether you finished the trail or not. Your body needed to catch up to the mentality. And sometimes it's that lagging metric, right? Of like, I'm going to be a successful salesperson, but you're not going to make a sale for a year. But it will come that, right? But you have to embody that every day. Like and you did that, right? And like, obviously you failed the first time, but you trained, you got better, and you did it. And I see you doing it again with like the filming and just where you are in Oregon. And it's just exciting to see that happen in real time.
So that's kind of my question, Tommy, or you, Caleb. So the first time you did the trail, you failed and you had to, I know that sounds really harsh, and you had to go back to this area of comfort to recuperate. What did it feel like to have to go back to that? I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm not pushing right now. And then to feel I need to get back out there. What was that feeling like?
Man,
And
I
how
could go
tempting
really,
was it to be like, hey, I gave it a shot. I got really far. Let's move on to the next phase of life.
yeah, man, I don't even think the failure was when I stopped hiking the trail. My failure was the space in between me hiking the trail or trying to hike the trail the first time and the next time. And I could get really in depth into this. So just tell me to stop if I'm rambling too long. But getting off the trail, so for people who don't know, I got like, I didn't even make it to 100 miles. And so that's not even less than like 2% or something. And I tore a tendon in my ankle. It was so bad that I thought it was shin splints because my whole leg was on fire in the front, but it was just that tendon pulling. Anyways, so like the first 3 months, basically when I went to the doctor, they're like, if you want this to heal quickly, you can't walk on it, which first enraged me because I was like, are you kidding me? I just went from walking every moment of the day of my life. So I went and stayed with my parents. I would get in trouble with my mom because she would see me trying to walk without the crutch to keep the weight off of my foot, messing up probably more. And really, I think the real test, I think like when I look back on it, man, it was all exactly meant to happen how it did. The real test was how I would emotionally respond when something didn't, like I wasn't able to willpower through something my first time. I did fail, like I literally did fail technically. But to me, that wasn't the real failure. The real failure was, okay, in that space, I pretty much knew I was going to go back roughly, but I was like kind of looking for permission from my dad to be like, can I go try this again? Because he was really supporting me for it. And when I like figured out then the next test was, okay, are you going to physically prepare more than you did last time? And I like barely did. Like I barely did just enough. Like I could have done so much more. Like, hindsight's 2020. But that was all the real testing. It wasn't even the failure. It was how do you respond to failure? Because once I failed, the real responsibility was really on me. Like if I had done the trail first successfully the first time, gone through it, I don't think I would have even necessarily ever felt the real weight of responsibility to keep going, because the second time it was like, this is my only opportunity I have. Like the first time there wasn't even that thought of kind of like, la-di-da, we're gonna, oh man, my ankle hurt. Oh, that's really disappointing, blah, blah, blah. The space in between doing it the first time and the second time, that was the real test. There were lots of times I failed that test miserably. Like that test does not compare to the hurting my ankle and getting off the trail the first time. So I think that was how it was different more than that first failure.
I'm going to add something into this because I think it's important that we're talking about, you kind of are describing two different positions. So one is those that have just kind of been living a life dealing with fatherless. They're kind of mothered into the next phase of life. We made that comment on the last podcast. Being fathered is so much different in a way that the atmosphere of it almost, it's not an exact correlation, but it's almost like God fathered the children of Israel out of Egypt, but they would rather go live with the misery, but still know what each day looked like and be mothered by Egypt. Like there was kind of like these two contrasting views. And just for a note and a disclaimer, and we don't like doing disclaimers here, but just for everyone listening, I'm not comparing mothers to Egypt and slavery. I'm talking about just the over-mothering where you want to control someone where they don't think for themselves and they don't take responsibility for themselves, that you actually get your value from their dependence upon you. As a father, I want my kid to go further. So how do I lay a foundation that they could go farther than me? So this was Jesus' attitude, is greater works will you go do than I do because I go to the Father. So he actually was setting us up to go further than where he went. And so I find it very interesting. How do we leave and go start our own, but still maintain a good fathering into the next phase and taking those tools with us? Is that the same thing or is it different? And I just want to correspond that we used to go as a kid, you would apprentice with your dad. So the difference isn't necessarily taking what's been given to you and advancing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not being mothered. But the difference is where you take the responsibility of it. And good fathers will make you own it. And I remember this quick story that Peter Daniels had shared, the billionaire from South Australia. And he was talking about, he met a man who was a businessman and he had 10,000 employees or over 10,000 employees. And he was transitioning the business over to his son. And boy, that doesn't always work well. I could give you 1,000 examples where that doesn't work well. But it actually could work right if it was done right. It actually is a proper passing on. And the father had all the employees come to the meeting, and then he told his son, he did the transition of power. Then he looked at his son and goes, "Now I want you to go shake every person's hand and look them in the face because you are now responsible for their well-being." And the shifting was that you don't get the power of the company, you get the responsibility and weight of the company. That's what the father passed on. And I think that God does the same thing. It's like, I'm going to free you so you can now do this for other people. So when we see the exploration of the Apostle Paul and him stretching and going way beyond and standing alone, he didn't do it so he could prove himself something. He did it because he was already something, and everything he did was for someone else's sake. So in true fathering and you taking on new things and you stepping out into new environments is really not so you can find yourself. It's so you could die to yourself so you could do things bigger for other people. That really is at the heart of what fathering does. So once you know, that's why I made the statement last week, once you know that you're loved, you can now sacrifice for other people. So in a way, Caleb, you have a lot of positives you're able to build off of. And you've taken one, and that's why your dad's kind of a big importance. And each step wasn't to get away from that. It wasn't like you're holding me back, I need to go do them on my own, but it was almost more like I'm watching you, I need to go do it on my own. And you have become more selfless in this journey than self-focused. Does that make sense? Like you weren't running from something. Someone who's running becomes more self-absorbed, not selfless. Someone who's advancing and letting go of their old comforts to take on what's new, and that hardness becomes selfless. Different a different thinking. And so I kind of want to know your guys' thoughts about it, because there is a difference between escaping Egypt. Like, you can remove all the people from Egypt and they wanted to leave, but they still didn't want to go into the promised land because they saw themselves as victims. So it didn't change them to get out. But those like Joshua and Caleb, who saw what was given to them to build off of what the Father was providing, they went and conquered, but it took time. There's two different thinkings. There's two things happening that look the same, but they're very different. And so we're looking at the fathering side of true, you become a man and selfless, that you can act on behalf of other people, that your actions actually provide benefit to others, not just you getting away from your problem.
Yeah, well, even on the trail, I think of a specific moment where I really wanted to quit. And, on the trail, I wasn't really running away from anything. It was like you're saying, moving towards something. And there was one time where I called my dad, and he was basically, and I was like, I'm not gonna quit, but I'm really thinking about it, blah, blah, blah. And he was basically like, listen, I can't hike this trail for you. I also cannot come pick you up. And I remember being like, oh, thank goodness. Because really, like, I didn't want him to, like you're saying, the difference between mothering and fathering. Like, if I had called my mom because she loves her kids, she would have been like, I'll be there as soon as I can. Like, don't worry, I'll come pick you up. We'll get you some Chick-fil-A and everything will be okay. My dad was like, listen, there's a military saying, embrace the suck. I can't come get you. I'm not going to. You have to do this on your own. And very specifically also, he said, you really have to like talk to God about this. So he was like, basically like, I'm not even going to talk to you about the suffering you're going through right now. This is between you and God. And that's what I really needed, of not, because then the selfish thing would have been for me to, for my dad would have been like, oh yeah, come home. It's too much. The heat's too much. The summer's unusually warm, throwing up your food in the morning before you hike. Like, that's too bad. We should get you back in. No, he really had to teach me selflessness in that moment, because even though I was doing the hike, me continuing the hike made it not about me. It made it about my relationship with God. And really, it made it about God, if anything, because it was to really hear him and strip away everything else. And I think that's even like, not to bring it up again, but Tommy, you were saying like, even out in Oregon, like, there's a lot of things that are very convenient when you have a lot of friends around, that you can, even coworkers that you really like you can distract yourself from all your mental challenges and things that are inconvenient. So honestly, I think it's, if anything, it's God's just like doing me a really big favor. Cause in this case, like even this coming out here on my own, to still have the opportunity to have really nothing else going on except between me and God. And, that's different for everybody, how that looks. And even then I'll say, that sounds cool. That sounds like a good idea, but I don't know if I want to be in my shoes sometimes. It's not always pretty. And I do not succeed at it, because your phone exists. You can come up with your own distractions. You can go do anything you want to just distract yourself from God. Like, even like, just making myself work on things that I don't need to work on at all on my computer. Like, being like, I need to get together a video for this. Nobody's asking me to do it. It's for like my own promotion on social media. And then I do nothing with it anyway. So I would say the metric of success is still, it may look like it, but it's really on your heart. So I think it's the same thing time and time again, where God wants to father us. And to be fathered, you have to be pushed out into something tough or something that's challenging. Your mom would love to keep the training wheels on the bike for the rest of your life. Your dad's going to be like, yeah, you're going to end up with some bloody knees and elbows. Here's at least a helmet, maybe, so there's no long-term damage, but you're going out there and you're going to do this thing. And I think God does that for us too. Like, a father disciplines a child that he loves. And I think we think that's sometimes like punishment for doing something wrong, but also like, think about discipline of running or athletics or fitness. That discipline is regardless of anything you've done, but to benefit you. So I think there's other things that we miss that God wants to do for us as well in fathering us. That's disciplining us towards something really powerful for our lives, not just disciplining us to keep us away from something. So even in that, like being on the trail, my father was disciplining me when he said, I'm not going to pick you up. You have to do this on your own and talk to God. that was discipline, not for any bad reason at all, simply because he knew there was more for me. And so I think God does that for us as well in moments if we let him. And it's tough. It is like, I can talk about it, but I'm going to get off this call and be like, man, it is kind of depressing being out here alone, like really alone. And so it's not easy either. I'll say that. Like, it's nice to talk about, but go and do it too. But push through. The reward is worth it. It's definitely worth it, especially doing it with God, if anything.
Here's the thing it was for me, because Brian, you mentioned the kind of the leaving Egypt thing. And so it was when I went off to college, it was like everyone else, like you're leaving home. And it was a very conscious thing on my end. Like I am leaving home, not because I hate my home, but because I need to go out. Like I need to leave the mothering environment. And I'm not even going to go home during the summers. I was in it. But I had realized at some point, and I didn't realize this until years later, I had left the mothering, but I was always waiting to be kind of swept up along someone else's thing to go into the next thing. There wasn't this direction of this is what you are, Jason, pursue this and go into that. It was just, well, I'm along with this, I'm associated with this, I'm all these different things that are someone else's thing, but there was never the fathering of this is what you are. And there was kind of a moment years after college where it was a little bit like the moment when the Israelites get to the Red Sea and they're freaking out because Pharaoh and the armies are right behind them. They're like, what are we going to do? And Moses is like, God's going to fight for you, don't worry. And then God says, why are you crying to me? You stretch out your hand, you part the sea, and you tell the people to walk through. And I remember just realizing I had spent years sitting there waiting for God's going to do something. Someone's going to come along and really bring me into this, to what I'm supposed to do. And it was like God had this father moment. He's like, why are you waiting on something like that? There's all these things that are in your heart to do that I've equipped you with, and you've even been trained for. Go and do one of them. And it wasn't until that I understood, okay, this is what the fathering aspect looks like. Because it's one thing for me to leave the maternal nurturing. It's another to jump into, I want to be fathered. Let's go with something.
Jason, that's excellent correspondent. That's an excellent correlation between the two things. And I think that is an important thought because it's not one or the other. It's not when the children of Israel were delivered from Egypt, they weren't delivered from Egypt. They were delivered to the promised land. We don't like saying that because they never went into the promised land. They had to die off till the next generation. They wouldn't go in. So being delivered from something doesn't mean you get the promise. You're going to have to change. Now, it doesn't mean it's being denied to you either. We're the reason we don't go in. It's not God. And I think this is so true about good fathering is from God being a father. He loves you enough to see what you are. And he wants you to take his giftings and his promises and what he wants to do. And he's miraculous. There's no question. But he wants you to step into it. This, I will say, one of the biggest damaging points. I see this working more in certain fields. Like I almost see this more happening in the ultra running field than I do in the church world field. It's very interesting. Like I'm kind of shocked. I understand now more and more why Paul talks about sports because there's much better metaphor than what we've used. But one thing that's been very damaging, and I think it just needs to be considered, is most of our growth. Okay, I'm just going to speak for me. My Christian culture was all about being mothered and being saved and waiting for God to do something. So we would all come in and just keep waiting for God to do something. And then we just talk and no one was really doing anything. And that's when you start getting all the striving. And then people want to hear new teachings. And then we want new flavors. And then we want it more exciting. And we're trying to make God more exciting when the whole time it's like, why don't we just act on the simple thing that he told us to do and go do that? And what could happen? And so I think that's why there's such a draw, especially with this hunger. There's a generation that want to know God. They want to know Jesus. They want an experience with him, but they don't want it just like so we can sit around waiting for God to do something. And the idea that God is just sovereignly going to go do something is not true. It's just simply not true. And the idea that God, he could do anything. He is miraculous. We're just going to wait for him to do it. It's the same thinking. Whether you believe he's going to do something and it's just the way it is and God sovereignly put you there, or God's going to miraculously do something and you're just waiting for him to do it. Both of them are not, they're escapes, they're mothering, and the Father's calling us into being fathered. And so, yes, he is doing things that up here we don't understand right now. And yes, there is things that he takes us into that are absolutely miraculous, that there's no way that could have happened. But he's always designing it in a way that he gets to be a father, that his identity is put in you. When we truly understand how God loves us, when we truly have the love that causes us to come alive on the inside of us, is when he says to us, I see what you are, and I am proud of that. And I'm going to bring that into something, and I'm going to draw you in, and you're going to experience that life coming on you, and I'm going to do it with you. I'm going to walk through the valley of the shadow of death with you to the table that's prepared before you. I mean, Psalm 23 is just such an epitome of this. When you hear Psalm 23 being talked about, we hear, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. Oh, and that gets quoted all the time. This is true. There is a point you need that, right? And then it says, and he leads us in the paths of righteousness. So he's showing us how to walk that trail. He walks along and he whispers, here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. Here's how you do this. And like this bonding with him of how to do life. And he starts showing you that. Then he comes to a point and says, now I need you to walk through that valley. Don't worry, I'm with you. My rod, my staff will comfort you. I'm right behind you. Everywhere you step, I'm going with you. And we're going to the table that's been prepared for you, where the enemy has been trying to stop you from getting to. That place of the table of honor and glory that I've set for you. I'm going to bring you there, but you got to go through this valley. And it's just like in Lord of the Rings, when Aragorn has to finally go face himself and the sword, and he's brought the sword that was reforged of his father. You have to go face yourself and become the king. So he has to go into the cave of death and call in and take the risk and to stand up. That's the place of fathering. And when we say, I want that, you will understand the love of God, and you will understand the fear of the Lord, and you will understand what it truly means to embrace all that he's created us for. Because when you all of a sudden go, I want to be there because he trusts me to win. He trusts me to go in there. He sees what I am. He's cheering me on. All of a sudden now when you emerge, there's a great value, and you're like, man, God, get rid of I'm done with the cooling of the river, and I'm done with, oh, you lay my head to rest. I want to be a man. And all of a sudden you're sitting at the table that's been prepared for you. Something far better is sitting there waiting. That's the fathering that God wants.
I just really quickly want to expound on the Aragorn metaphor that you gave, because that part is just unbelievable in the movie to me, because everybody's like, you can't go in there, you'll die. Nobody who ever walks in there returns. And so, he has to take that step, like you're saying, Brian, like you have to go do the thing. But when he's in there, what actually gives him the power in that is who he is. And he's the son of Isildur. He's Isildur's heir. And so I think a lot of times too, we're going into something thinking we're not that, like we're not a son of God. He's not our father. But the whole thing, even that battle, fully determined, was riding on Aragorn's identity and him stepping into that, taking the sword to go lead the armies and wield that. So I think that is just so huge too, because that goes again with like one of the pillars that we're always talking about too, with this father part is identity. And so also knowing that you're a son, that's where the real power is, to go walk in this. And so I think that metaphor is one of my favorites. I mean, Lord of the Rings is always a great one to bring up.
And isn't that sort of the overprotective mothering aspect? And we talked about this a little bit earlier today. Procrastination comes from this, I'm avoiding awkwardness or avoiding pain, so I'll put it off. And it's this overprotective, maybe you can't actually handle it, so don't go after it, or don't expose yourself to this because maybe you can't. And it's that insecurity of identity that you have to be fathered out of.
It's crazy. I mean, I could keep on going on about Lord of the Rings, because that is also exactly in there with the King of Rohan, who's about to lose his whole kingdom to the armies of darkness, because there's a man in his ear, Wormtongue, who's saying these things of, like, these men are lying to you. It's not safe to send. He even banishes his own son from the kingdom, because his son goes out to fight the battles on his own, because he's got this, like we're saying, mothering voice in his ear saying it's not safe. And what sets him free? Gandalf brings him his sword, tells him who he is, and he says, I think your fingers would remember their strength better if they held your sword. And it's like about him remembering who he is. Again, with this theme of Lord of the Rings, of the sword and this identity, and the sword being the authority to carry that identity. Like the only reason Aragorn had the authority over the armies of the dead was because of this sword that's related to who he is. So again, like Jason, you bring that up, and it was going to greatly cost these men a lot. Even like, I mean, you see it throughout history too, right? Like World War II, it was all the ones who were trying to appease Hitler and like Neville Chamberlain before kind of like trying to play the game with him, until it's like a character like Winston Churchill comes in and goes, we're not going to negotiate with this enemy. Like, we're not going to play it safe and stepping into this role of authority. So I think like throughout history in the big stuff, and then even in the little stuff, how you can even talk to yourself, or how I talk to myself, of playing safe about something. Well, you're not really this, so you shouldn't go do this because you're not qualified to go do it. Like, you shouldn't go try and make this film or something because you don't have any experience in it. It's not going to be that good. All these like doubts in our head, that I think that's all from this mothering thing of wanting to be safe. And so I think, again, what we're talking about is going out and pushing into something new, something challenging, but that identity with the Father is what makes that possible, and having the Father bring you into that.
You know, I think it's interesting too, that same scenario in the movie Band of Brothers, in the series when they're taking, it's right after Bastogne and they're taking Foy. If you haven't seen that series, it's absolutely one of my favorite all-time shows that's ever been produced. That doesn't make it great. It just means I love it. So there's this scene where they're about ready to take Foy, and Commander Dyke is just kind of this guy in a suit. Like, he's the one responsible for it, but he's so terrified of everything. So he's always in hiding, always having to do new meetings, needing more meetings, meeting more meetings. I'm going to go do a meeting. Like, by the way, that should tell you something. If you're working for a place and they always need a meeting to get something accomplished, just a thought. Sometimes meetings are better than action. So anyway, they're always needing a meeting. So all of a sudden now they have to go battle. They have to take this town of Foy. And Spears is going to lead the men, and the men are kind of know what kind of man this guy is. So he goes and gets started, and halfway through, he stops by this big hay bale, and the Germans have all these guns, and they're starting to locate where they're at and get their mortars lined up on their current location. And they're being yelled at, move forward, move forward. And all of a sudden, the lieutenant Dykes just gets all just freaked out, and he's like, retreat, call them all back. We got to go back. And from the lines, the officers say, go forward, because they know if they go forward, they'll win. But it's like all of a sudden the panic steps in. So they get this other lieutenant, Spears, who just pretty much has died to himself completely to be a soldier. And so he runs in immediately, hey, go relieve him. Doesn't think about himself, runs straight across the field, gets to Dykes, where he's hiding behind this hay bale, and says, I'm taking over. Immediately looks at the sergeant. Here's what you need to do. You go take this, you take this, make sure that's cleared. Once that's cleared, we're going to move. Level-headed, thinking, giving direction, understanding in the midst of this bombardment. Then he goes and he takes, and one of the troops has gotten recircled around the city. He runs through, this was documented. He runs through the whole German line. The Germans are looking at him going, what are you doing? Jumps over the wall to the other side of the city, reconnects, give assignments to those guys, runs all the way back and starts the move, and they ended up taking the city. By the way, Dykes was killed in an explosion at the hay bale, so he loses his life. But that fearfulness, that apprehension, at some point, a good father, now I understand so much what Peter was talking about, what Paul was talking about, what he's telling Timothy. He's not talking about the sufferings of just life is going to get hard, so prepare for suffering quick. The world's going to come to an end. Store up all your food quick. It wasn't selfish. It was so selfless, because this is what I am. And Paul said, in all of these things, I am more than a conqueror. Doesn't matter what you if I get shipwrecked. It doesn't matter what happens to me. It doesn't matter the harm that comes to me. It doesn't matter the prison. I am more than a conqueror in everything that I am, because he loves me. Like, when you get fathered, you're doing actions selflessly, and in a way, you become more like a Lieutenant Spears, who just can be calm, in the fierce of fighting and give direction and align and make risky decisions for the sake of everybody else. And it just changes the dynamic.
And it's not safe, but he's good, right? Like, he's great, but he's not safe. Like, he's not the one who's going to retreat and go back to safety, but he's going to be the one that conquers, right? All this made me think of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, C.S. Lewis. There's the quote where they're talking about Aslan the lion, and there's a quote of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you. And I think that is something that like really changed my perspective on this too, of like, yes, God is a safe space, but in reality, not really, because he's going to be pushing me out. He's good. He's a great, good God, and he wants good things for me, but that doesn't mean I just get to rest in his presence and do nothing and sit there and just, oh, this is wonderful. And meanwhile, the world is crumbling around me. Like that's not good. That is not good. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying, like with identity. And I had this whole thing kind of brought up another thing that I guess didn't really think about until now, is there was someone really close to my wife and I when I graduated school and I was getting into sales, and they made a comment, and I don't know if they would ever remember this comment or if it was just in passing, but they mentioned to my wife, not my wife at the time, my fiance, ooh, Tommy's getting into sales. That's not really his thing. Like, you guys are probably going to struggle for a while. And it's like, oof, like, and I didn't let that bother me, because you're right. I'm not a salesperson. I'm Tommy. Like, that's my identity. And so like I had this unshakable confidence that I'm going to be good no matter what, because of who I am, not because of what I need to become to fit into this mold to succeed in this niche market. Like, it's not becoming the thing, the function of what you're doing, but it's about being you in that thing. And being you in that thing isn't like, I'm not saying like, oh, be you, like fall to all your sins and all the lies, like that's who you are. It's like, no, I know my Father so well, and he knows me, and he's speaking to me who I am, that I can operate in that in the world, and I can bring his kingdom into the world. And to be honest, it's not safe, but it's the best place to be, because it's trust and full reliance on him. It's not my work, it's his work. I can be good and keep doing good, but it's God who makes it great. Like, I can only do so much. I can continue to do good every day to my neighbors, but it's God that brings the change. And I think that's another factor of it too, is like sometimes and Brian, maybe it's different for you, but you probably know the American culture, like we're a microwave culture, like punch it in, get it done. I want it now. I want everything I want now. But we have a hard time just being good day after day after day after day after day. It's like running, man. It's like, if I don't run every day, like suddenly I'm not good anymore. Like, you think you would learn, right? But it's like those simple things of just being good and consistent day in and day out. And I don't have the Bible verse up anymore, but it's in Galatians. Do not grow weary of doing good. And I mean, that's it. It's like, if you continue to give out of your overflowing heart of like who you are and your identity, like that's how God uses you. And it's not safe. Like I want to say again, like it's not safe, and it won't ever be safe, but that's good.
Isn't it crazy how there's so many people, and I'll be honest, I've been guilty of this in the past. You have this instinct of when something comes up, like Tommy's going into sales, and there's, ooh, I don't know if that's the best fit. It's kind of, it's sink or swim in sales, and maybe you don't have the personality for that. And everyone feels like they need to be the mother pointing those things out. And no one is just like, bro, let's go. You have zero experience. Awesome. You're going to crush it. I know you, but you're going to do this. And the funny thing is, I feel like we talked about this a little bit earlier. We've made community that first thing. Community is to have people around you to keep you accountable and point out your shortcomings so you're aware of them. It's like, shut up. That's not what community is. Or maybe that's what community is, but that's not what a brotherhood is.
No.
And maybe we don't need community if that's what it's going to be. Maybe we just need a brotherhood around us.
Quick note on that, Caleb, I'll let you go real quick, but just a quick note on that, Jason, is like when you're saying like community is just like the place to bring like my failures or like people to hold me accountable for my failures. I think that's so stupid. It's like, I know my failures more than any of you. So like, there's no point of having you because I already know it. Like, there's no point. If it's the point is just to come share my failures, like I know my failures more intimately than anyone else will know my failures because they're mine. That's just,
And I guarantee you spent more nights thinking, man, I'm getting into sales. What am I getting myself into? How am I going to handle this? Than any friend around you could think about.
100%.
I think it's also crazy, Tommy, that you guys pointed out so well. I think it's always the person who doesn't even really know you who's going to make the mothering comment like that. Because if somebody really knew you, like you were saying, like, well, I'm Tommy. Like, that if somebody, like, if you were to go do something else today, I would be, and I wasn't like, if it was drugs or something, I'd be slightly concerned. But, if it was like some other direction in life, like some job, and it was something you wanted to do and going after, I wouldn't be like, Tommy, are you sure about that? Like, that's blah, blah, blah. I'm worried about you. It's like, no, if somebody knows who you are and you're going to go do this thing and it's the right thing to go do, they're not going to make a comment like that. And I think that's why it's like, that's what the voice of the Father is, right? Like he knows who you are. So why would you listen to any other voice that would be like, oh, but are you sure, Tommy? Like even our own doubts that we play into our head and everything sometimes play against that voice. And so I think it's funny that you bring it up because it happens every time. My dad told me the other day that when I first moved out here, somebody was like, are you sure about Caleb moving 30 hours across the country? And my dad was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's supposed to. And you would think like your dad would like want to keep you around. Of course he does, but he knows, like when he graduated high school and was 18, he didn't even have a dad in his life, but he moved also 30 hours across the country and went and logged in British Columbia, -40-degree weather, didn't really know anybody out there, and has the coolest stories of his life from there. Like so much of like, man, that was the time, as he would say. But, there's so much where when you go and do something like this, if somebody knows who you are, they're going to be like, yeah, go do it. And I think if you're listening to God, he's going to be, yeah, go do it. Like even, I know, Brian, you brought up earlier the ultra running space, but you can see this throughout it, like just of people online hating on people of like, you're not really built for this, blah, blah, blah. And then like people like we know, like Mark Dowdle go and do something crazy when people are really betting against him because he's going against some of the even crazier people out there and going, I don't know. Mark's like, I know who I am. I know I'm going out to do this thing. Like, don't. And, his response often is, don't talk. Let's just go do it. Let's go see and find out. And so it's so funny how you bring it up, Tommy, because me knowing you, I would be like, why would somebody say that? Like, because I'm obviously on the other side of it. I'm like, Tommy is like, as far as salesman I know, the best salesman I know. So how could you say that and then, potentially ruin his life opportunities going for him to go do something great that he's good at? So I think that's important too, thinking about where the person is speaking from, especially if they don't truly know.
Well, I'll just say this. There is no good story that has been formed in comfort. So if you want to write a story, it's never about what's comfortable. And I'm just going to leave with this is that when you discover the security, the true inner security of a father's love for you, because God is not selfish, he doesn't do things for his benefit. He does things for your benefit. A good father is willing to let their son go 30 miles because he considers his son more than he considers himself. And it's hard. There's roles of the different parts of a true mother that we need that, and a true father, and we need that. And the mother cuts and lets go. It's almost like cutting the umbilical cord. There's a season where they leave one environment and go into another, and they're both necessary for the development of our child. And both parents truly know what's best. It's hard if you don't have a father pulling you for that mothering thinking to want the kid to stay nearby, but they're really not thinking about the kid. They're thinking about themselves. And a father helps pull that out. They're both necessary, but a father pulls it out. And since we live in a world that we've destroyed the father, that's why this becomes a bigger emphasis. For those of you who are like out there going, man, I just wish I could know my father. I wish God could love me like that. When he trusts you to do challenging things, you're going to find his presence even more because he sees more in you than you ever could see. And he wants you to go further than you could ever go. And he wants you to take places that you never thought you could take. And he wants to advance you into areas that you never thought you could advance because he cares so much about you. Because in that, you will stop thinking less about and now your life is influencing other people and you are changing the course of other people. And it becomes this big win. And so, just so you know, when you're put in a challenge position, don't look at it as, why, God, are you putting me here? Put, God, why do you want me to be in the middle of this situation that you see, that you believe in, and let's go win? That's the mentality that a father brings.
Any final thoughts, Tommy or Caleb?
I was just brought back to the quote Winston Churchill: success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. And I just think, going right back to what you're saying, Brian, like, I serve a God of action, and my God does things with me. I'm fathered by my God through the actions, through the journeys I take with God on a daily basis. My God isn't in a closet, in a bookshelf in my home, and I go and do my job every day, and I come back to him and I'm like, oh, hey, you're there again. Like, hope all is well. Okay, I got bills and I got things to take care of. Like, no, God is with me every step of the day. And sometimes I'm going off in different directions, but I'm following this path. And sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's easy. Sometimes you're going downhill, you're cruising, and sometimes you're fighting uphill for a long, long time, and it's just tiring. But you're walking with God. You're walking with your Father. Think of like so many stories, like all the stories with my dad, all the fun stories that I remember are hard things. It's never the sitting on the couch and jesting with each other or whatever. It's like, Dad, you remember when you thought we could like tear down this fence and you didn't know what you're doing, and we shot ourselves up with nails, but at least we were doing stuff. And it's those kind of things. And I think that's what's being a son, is actually allowing God to father you through action. Like, you actually have to accept that. Like, you have to be a son.
I don't want to even add anything on that because it was just fantastic. But I think both points of, like, I look at my dad, he grew up without a dad. He found a way for God. He found God. God fathered him. I ended up with an awesome dad. And there are still ways that God has to father me that my own dad can't. So there's the juxtaposition of that. But all that matters is that God is your father. And that's true today, no matter what you're doing. And you just have to go walk with him. Like you're saying, Tommy, I think that is, and he wants to. That is the crazy part. Like, it's not like he's obligated to just because he's your dad. Like, maybe that's what some people's dads are like. He really wants to. And that's like real love, of walking through you with it, through all the parts where you're complaining. And I've complained to God a lot, and I still can't believe he listens and deals with it and wants me to keep on moving, climbing up the next mountain. And he's there on the climb. He's there at the bottom of it. He's there at the top. And God wants to do it because he loves us, which is just unreal. When you really get into it, you'll find it and you'll know it. And that, I mean, like we're saying, it's just walk with God, because the reward of that is worth every bit of being unsafe. Like Tommy was saying, every bit of pain and suffering. You'll look back and be like, man, that trail was worth every bit of it. And then you'll realize that you're on the next trail too. So that's definitely the encouragement, is to walk with God. It's definitely worth it.
That's good. I want to leave you guys with this. I don't know why, but this popped into my head. There's this saying in business that there's these two executives that are having a discussion about whether or not to invest in training their employees to get them more skills, make them better workers. And one of the executives says, well, what if we invest all this time and mentorship into our employees and then they leave us for another company? And the other one says, well, what if we don't and they stay? And I thought of that in this context, like, you have this fear of, well, what if I leave the comfort zone and I fail or I get hurt? What if you stay there your whole life and you never learn how strong you are? So something to think about. We appreciate you guys being here. Until next time, keep the faith and stay in the fight.